Qui-Gon Jinn's master once cut off 2 hands in a single lightsaber duel. The same man who trained the Jedi who discovered Anakin Skywalker would later try to murder that very same chosen one in cold blood. His name was Count Dooku, and his story will destroy everything you think you know about good and evil in Star Wars. Because what if I told you that Count Dooku wasn't evil? He was right. The perfect Jedi? Picture the most perfect Jedi you can imagine. Noble birth, brilliant mind, unmatched skill with a lightsaber trained by Yoda himself. That was Count Dooku, and it's exactly why his fall was so devastating. Dooku didn't just follow the Jedi code, he embodied it. While other Jedi struggled with attachment, Dooku had willingly given up an entire planet to serve the Force. Think about that. This man could have been a king but chose to be a protector instead. His lightsaber style was Form 2, Makashi, the most elegant, precise form of combat ever developed. While others relied on brute force, Dooku fought like poetry in motion. Every strike calculated, every movement perfect. But here's what made him truly special. He wasn't just skilled, he was wise. When Dooku took Qui-Gon Jinn as his Padawan, he didn't just teach lightsaber techniques, he taught something far more dangerous, how to think independently. Question everything, Dooku told young Qui-Gon. The strongest convictions are those tested by doubt. He had no idea he was teaching his own Padawan the very mindset that would eventually expose the Jedi Order's greatest failures. Because while Dooku was becoming the perfect Jedi, cracks were already forming in the galaxy he was sworn to protect. The first crack! Everything changed at Galadran. What should have been a simple peacekeeping mission turned into a massacre that would haunt Dooku forever. The politicians sent Dooku incomplete information. They had their own agenda, corporate interests wanted the true Mandalorians eliminated, and they used the Jedi as their personal executioners. 22 Jedi died that day. Hundreds of Mandalorians were slaughtered, and Dooku realized something that would eventually destroy him. The Republic he served was corrupt to its core. "We brought peace," he reported to the Council. "But at what cost? We were manipulated, used as weapons by those who claimed to represent justice." Master Yoda's response was chilling. Clouded your judgment has become. Clear the path of the Jedi is. But Dooku was beginning to see that the path led directly off a cliff. The second crack came when he began investigating the Senate. What he found was a system so broken, so corrupt, that it made the old Sith Empire look honest by comparison. Senators openly taking bribes, corporations writing their own laws, entire systems ignored because they lacked political influence. When Dooku brought evidence to the Council, their response was devastating. Politics is not the Jedi way. That night, alone in his chambers, Dooku made a decision that would change galactic history. If the Jedi wouldn't clean up the corruption, maybe it was time for someone else to try. He just didn't realize he was walking directly into a trap that had been set specifically for him. The death of hope. Then Qui-Gon died on Naboo, and something inside Dooku shattered forever. This wasn't just any Jedi, this was the man Dooku had raised from childhood, trained, loved like a son. And he died protecting a system that wasn't worth his sacrifice. At the funeral, watching the flames consume his former Padawan, Dooku felt something he'd never experienced before. Pure, unfiltered rage. "He died for nothing," Dooku whispered. "Protecting corruption, serving politicians who would sell their own souls for power." But it wasn't just grief driving Dooku, it was revelation. The Trade Federation's blockade, the emergence of a Sith Lord after 1,000 years, Qui-Gon's death, this wasn't random. This was orchestrated. Someone was playing a game on a galactic scale, and the Jedi Council was too blind to see it. That night, a mysterious figure contacted Dooku. Someone who had been watching his growing disillusionment with great interest. Someone who promised answers to all the questions that were tearing Dooku apart. And someone who called himself Darth Sidious, the seduction of wisdom. The meeting between Dooku and Sidious wasn't what you'd expect. No lightning, no threats, no dramatic displays of power. Instead, it was a conversation between two intellectuals, and it was absolutely terrifying. Sidious didn't try to corrupt Dooku with promises of power. Instead, he did something far more dangerous. He validated everything Dooku already believed about the galaxy's problems. "You see it clearly," Sidious said. "The decay, the corruption, the willful blindness of those who should be protectors. The Republic is a cancer, and the Jedi are its antibodies that have stopped working." This wasn't crude temptation. This was philosophical seduction of the highest order. Sidious presented himself as a fellow reformer who understood that sometimes, to save something, you must first be willing to destroy it. "Your Padawan died because the system failed him," Sidious continued. "How many more will die while the Council meditates on their failures? How many innocents will suffer while the Jedi serve corrupt politicians instead of the Force?" And here's the terrifying part. Everything Sidious said was true. The Republic was corrupt, the Jedi were complicit, the system was broken. Dooku's mistake wasn't seeing these problems, it was believing that Sidious actually wanted to fix them. When Dooku finally accepted the title Darth Tyranus, he genuinely thought he was choosing the lesser evil. He believed he was sacrificing his own purity to save the galaxy from something worse. He had no idea he was becoming the very evil he sought to destroy. The perfect weapon. When Count Dooku emerged as leader of the Separatist movement, he became something unprecedented, a villain with a legitimate cause and the charisma to make it compelling. Think about this. Dooku didn't have to force systems to join his confederacy. His reputation as the perfect Jedi, combined with his understanding of galactic politics, made him the ideal revolutionary leader. When he stood before the galaxy and declared the Republic a failed state, billions listened and agreed. Because he wasn't wrong about the corruption, the inequality, the way core worlds exploited the Outer Rim, the Republic has become the very evil we once fought, Dooku declared. It claims freedom while enslaving systems to corporate interests. It preaches peace while its armies enforce the will of corrupt politicians. Every word was true, that's what made him so dangerous. But in combat, Dooku had become something even more terrifying. His elegant Form 2 style, now enhanced by the dark side, was unstoppable. When he fought Obi-Wan and Anakin on Geonosis, he wasn't just showing superior skill, he was demonstrating the difference between a Jedi bound by rules and a former Jedi who had abandoned all limitations. "You have interfered with our affairs for the last time," he told them calmly, before effortlessly defeating both simultaneously. This wasn't boasting, this was fact. Dooku had become everything a Sith should be, elegant, deadly, and utterly without the moral constraints that made Jedi predictable. The ultimate betrayal. Dooku was too intelligent not to eventually see the truth. Sidious was using him and planning to replace him with someone younger, more powerful, and more malleable. The signs were there. Sidious's growing interest in Anakin Skywalker. The way conversations about the future became vague. The realization that every promise of reform was being replaced by simple consolidation of power. "When we achieve victory," Dooku asked during one of their final meetings, "what then? What kind of galaxy will we build?" Sidious's answer chilled him. One where power serves its proper purpose, ensuring order through strength. Dooku began to understand that he hadn't joined a revolution. He had become the willing tool of someone who made the corrupt Republic look benevolent by comparison. But by then, it was too late. He was in too deep, had done too much evil in service of what he thought was good. He was trapped in a web of his own making, bound to serve a master he no longer trusted. The tragedy wasn't just that he had fallen, it was that he had fallen while genuinely trying to save the galaxy. The final duel. The end came aboard the Invisible Hand, in a lightsaber duel that was as much about symbolism as combat. Obi-Wan represented the flawed but genuine heroism of the Jedi Order. Anakin represented the raw power and barely controlled anger that would define the next generation of Sith. And Dooku, he represented the tragic middle ground, too noble to be truly evil, too corrupted to be truly good. Even outnumbered, even facing opponents decades younger, Dooku fought with lethal elegance. But there was something different this time. He wasn't fighting for Sidious's plan or his own vision of reform. He was fighting for his life. When he looked into Anakin's rage-filled eyes, Dooku saw his own fall reflected back at him. "You have hate," he observed almost sadly. "You have anger, but you don't have balance." When Anakin severed his hands when Dooku fell helpless before his replacement, there was perfect understanding between the dying Sith and the one being born. "Good, Anakin," Palpatine whispered. "Kill him. Kill him now." In that moment, Dooku finally understood the full scope of his betrayal. Not just his betrayal of the Jedi, but his betrayal by the master he had served so faithfully. "Do it," the Emperor commanded, and Anakin, driven by the same rage and noble intentions that had once consumed Dooku, brought his lightsaber down in a swift, decisive blow. Count Dooku died as he had lived in his final years, a tool discarded the moment he was no longer useful. The legacy of a noble monster. Count Dooku's story isn't just about one man's fall from grace, it's a warning about the dangers of absolute certainty and the tragedy of good intentions gone wrong. Dooku didn't fall because he was weak or evil. He fell because he was strong enough to see real problems, brave enough to seek radical solutions, and principled enough to sacrifice everything, including his principles, for what he believed was right. His story shows us that sometimes the most dangerous people are those who genuinely believe they're saving the world. Because when you're absolutely certain you're right, when you're convinced that your cause justifies any means, when you believe that your vision of the future is worth any sacrifice in the present, that's when heroes become the very monsters they set out to destroy. In the end, Dooku succeeded in destroying the corrupt republic he despised. The problem was, what replaced it was infinitely worse. Because the greatest tragedy of Count Dooku isn't that he became a villain, it's that he became a villain while trying to be a hero, and ended up making the galaxy darker than he ever imagined possible. That's a lesson worth remembering, no matter which side of the Force you're on. turned his back on the Jedi and his blade turned red. But why? Time to uncover the secrets behind every lightsaber color. Click on the video on your screen now.